To lay the proper foundation for our discussion today on Agenda 21, let me begin with this quote by Ayn Rand, as she wrote in Atlas Shrugged. She said, quote, "When you see that trading is done not by consent, but by compulsion, when you see that in order to produce, you need to obtain permission from men who produce nothing, when you see money flowing to those who deal not in goods but in favors, when you see that men get richer by graft and pull than by work, and your laws don't protect you against them but protect them against you, when you see corruption being rewarded and honesty becoming self-sacrifice, you may know that your society is doomed." And I do believe if this is allowed to continue to grow, that's exactly where we're headed. Well, the official word is out about me. According to several newspaper reports from around the country, I'm only here to spread wild conspiracy rumors to scare you into fearing your benevolent government. Guilty as charged. Well, you all know that something is very wrong in America. Every day, government at all levels grow more out of control, more intrusive in our personal lives, more of a threat to private property, all in total and flagrant disregard of the expressed will of the electorate. The fact is, Americans have grown to fear our own government. Life is getting harder. There is less optimism about the future. The once prominent phrase, American dream, seems to have just dropped out of our vocabulary. The reason? America is going through what Al Gore called a wrenching transformation of our society. Well, what kind of transformation? What has changed? Where does that transformation originate? How does it directly affect your daily life? Well, the old structure of what was once the United States of America is being replaced with a new political and economic order that is drastically changing the very underpinnings of our nation. It's being done quietly, behind the scenes, without debate, without votes, and with no official announcement. Yet this new ruling authority has become the official policy of the federal government and every state government, and it's moving into nearly every city, town, and small burg and rural area of this country. The ruling authority is called sustainable development, and its blueprint for transforming human existence is fully outlined in a UN document called Agenda 21. Well, I've had 18 years of experience studying every aspect of sustainable development in Agenda 21, and I've learned that it is an absolute threat to everything free Americans hold dear. Here's what I know. There is a new language taking over our government. The typical city council meeting discusses comprehensive development, diversity, historic preservation, and partnerships between city and private businesses. Civic leaders organize community meetings run by facilitators as they outline a vision for the town enforced by consensus. Free trade, social justice, consensus, carbon footprints, partnerships, preservation, stakeholders, land use, environmental protection, development, diversity, visioning, open space, heritage, comprehensive planning, critical thinking, and community service are all part of this new language. What are they really talking about? Where was such language first developed? Well, the term sustainable development was born on the pages of a United Nations document called Our Common Future, the official report of the 1987 UN World Commission on Environment and Development. As a result of this report, for the first time, the use of environmental protection and human development were tied to the age-old socialist goals of international redistribution of wealth. And that is the key to understanding the true purpose of sustainable development and all of its policies, control of all facets of the economy. Well, here's how the United Nations described Agenda 21 in one of its own publications in 1993 in an article entitled Agenda 21, the Earth Summit Strategy to Save the Planet. Quote, Agenda 21 proposes an array of actions which are intended to be implemented by every person on Earth. It calls for specific changes to the activities of all people. Effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all humans, unlike anything the world has ever experienced. End quote. Have you ever heard a more powerful manifesto issued for the purpose of government? And yet, when you and I point it out in protest against it, we are attacked as fringe radicals, nutcases. Well, here is the exact course that brought Agenda 21 to America and into your local community. At the top of the infrastructure, pushing sustainable development, is the United Nations Environmental Program, the UNEP. But the UNEP doesn't operate on its own. Influencing it are thousands of non-governmental organizations, NGOs. These are private groups which seek to implement a special political agenda. Through the UN infrastructure, particularly through the UNEP, they have great power. And I should point out to you that true NGOs are groups officially sanctioned and certified by the UN to participate in these international efforts. Somebody just doesn't suddenly rise up and say, I'm an NGO. They have an application that's about that thick to fill out, and in it they pledge to implement UN policies. Now, prior to the 1992 UN Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, these sanctioned NGO groups spent considerable time writing and creating the document that would be introduced to the world as Agenda 21. At the Earth Summit, nearly every head of state signed agreement to Agenda 21, including President George H.W. Bush. Agenda 21 is not a treaty that has to be ratified by the Senate. Rather, it's what's known as a soft law policy, a guideline that the nation agrees to implement through its own legislative process. And that fact makes it very difficult to track Agenda 21 policy coming from the UN down to your local city council because of that. But President Bush, in signing the document, committed the U.S. to implement the policies of Agenda 21. Agenda 21 then gained huge momentum when in 1993, President Bill Clinton issued an executive order to create the President's Council on Sustainable Development and made it official U.S. policy. Take a look at who served on that council, and you will see many of the same NGOs which helped write Agenda 21 for the United Nations. They include Jonathan Lash of the World Resources Institute, one of the three most powerful organizations influencing the UNEP. Also on the President's Council were John Sawhill of the Nature Conservancy, and Jay Hare of the National Wildlife Federation, and Michelle Perrault, International Vice President of the Sierra Club. All players in the creation of Agenda 21, now openly serving on the President's Council with the specific mission of implementing Agenda 21 into American policy. And there is an even more direct connection between Agenda 21 and our federal government. Included at the UNEP table to develop the policy, along with all of those NGO groups who helped write it in the first place, are these players from the federal government. They include the Department of State, the Department of Interior, the Department of Agriculture, the Environmental Protection Agency, the National Park Service, the U.S. Forest Service, and the Fish and Wildlife Service. These agencies send representatives to all UNEP meetings. Why do they do that? If Agenda 21 is just a myth that has no effect on our government. Well, you might remember a great deal of discussion during the Clinton administration about the idea of reinvention of government. Vice President Al Gore was put in charge of that reinvention, and well, that should have been our first clue. The reinvention, of course, was sustainable development. The purpose of the President's Council was to translate the guidelines of Agenda 21 into public policy to be administered by the federal government. And that step-by-step process translated into the ruling authority through which a UN plan, Agenda 21, has become unquestioned U.S. policy throughout the nation. It was invented by NGOs through the UN. It was brought to the U.S. through the President's Council and through federal and state legislation. It is being implemented on the local level through the involvement of the same NGOs who helped write it in the first place.